Latimer City Expats Club is a non-profit social organisation and our speakers are volunteers. The club as such assumes no responsibility or liability for the professional reputation of or the quality of services provided by the speaker today.
Mark Lloyd he's going to be giving a talk on this special school he's created, which I always call the Odyssey School. Now it's my pleasure and privilege to introduce the very unique and multi-talented and altogether too busy Mark Lloyd. Come on! Come on up.
Okay, thank you. Good morning, everybody. Okay, so thank you for allowing me to come and speak with you today. Ren has been chasing me for quite a while now, but as he says, I've always been too busy or too scared, really, to come back. So previously I was here with my acting hat on when I performed Every Brilliant Thing, but today is different. Today I stand here as myself, not as a character, and to be honest with you, that feels far more terrifying. At least when you're acting, you can blame it on the script. Today, if I mess up, that is all on myself. So, but that's also, I think, maybe what makes it more special, because I get to share not a character's story, but my own. So, before we go any further, I'd like you to close your eyes and think for a few moments. Cast your mind back to your school days. For some of you, that might be quite a while back. What memories do you have of them? Were they good? Were they bad? What was your school environment like? What was your classroom or teacher like? So when I look back on my memories of school, I have a mixture of both good and bad memories. I have this really vivid memory of being about 4 or 5 years old, and I'm sat in the dining room of the school, and there's a plate full of green peas, cold green peas in front of me, and I am crying, and the dinner ladies are saying, no, you are not allowed to move until you've eaten every single last pea on your plate. And since that day, I've always refused to eat green peas. But you know, there are really bright spots too. In primary school, my favorite teacher was my year 5 teacher, and she would dress up as different characters. She would treat us really kindly, and she made her lessons fun. When I moved to secondary school, my history teacher and my form teacher did exactly the same. He took the time to build that rapport, to get to know who I was as a student, to show an interest in me, and he made learning fun and enjoyable. Unfortunately, the same couldn't be said for my maths teacher. She wasn't helpful or kind. In fact, I think she hated me. I still have on my report cards, and they all sound very similar. Mark must stop talking. Mark must stop laughing. Mark needs to focus more. And so, maybe if you're anything like me, maybe your memories are similar to mine. Maybe your report cards are even similar to mine too. But perhaps you have your favorite teacher, your less favorite teacher. Perhaps you have in your head an image of how your classrooms looked. Children sat in rows, very strict rules. The teacher as this all-knowing being at the front, whose job it was to impart knowledge and prepare us for the adult world of work, 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 and more work. And I think it was during those years that I decided I wanted to be a teacher. I'd have all of my soft toys on my bed, and then I'd sit on the floor and I'd take the register and I would pretend to teach them. And then when I started Odyssey years later, I reached out to these 2 favorite teachers to tell them the positive impact that they had made on me. Their kindness planted a seed that has grown into the school that I now lead. Okay, so now I would like you to consider this word that is on the screen behind me, love. What does it mean to you? We can love our family, our spouse, our friends, even our pets. But what about love in our workplace? Love in the streets? Does that sound like a strange idea? And if you were to take that word love and apply it to your experience of school, would it be an accurate description? For me, looking back, I can think of teachers who made me feel cared for, who made learning joyful. But I can also think of moments when school felt cold, rule-bound, and even isolating and lonely. I think as humans, we can underestimate how powerful the word really is when it comes to education. When a child feels loved, not just liked, not just tolerated, but genuinely cared for, everything changes. They learn differently, they behave differently, they flourish, they come into themselves. So I will leave that word for you to chew on for the time being, while I take you back to the beginning of how all this started. I was born on the 18th of June, 1983. No, don't worry, not that far back. But I do want to give you a little context for how I ended up in Thailand in the first place. So back in 2010, I was in a very dark place. I was severely depressed, I had an addictive personality, and I had cycled through various recreational drugs, starting from ecstasy to speed, and then I became addicted to cocaine, and just the general party atmosphere. And in my early 20s, I lost my grandmother, who played a huge role in raising me. And so that loss was the trigger for a spiral of mental health struggles that has followed me throughout my adult life. And so by 2010, I had already tried to take my own life twice. I was self-harming, I was still drinking and using drugs, and I was working in the nightclub and hospitality industry, this place where you can easily access all of those things. I'd begun to reason that if this was all my life was going to be, then I might as well just throw myself off a bridge. But somewhere deep inside, I knew something had to change. I just couldn't continue my life like that. And so I started looking for a new vocation as a way out of the darkness I was in. And I found an ad in the newspaper, and then I was given the opportunity to train as a support worker for adults with learning difficulties and mental health needs. One Sunday, my job was to meet this blind gentleman at his house. I had to walk him across the city to a church service and then walk him home again. And that was my shift for that day. It was a grey, wet, miserable day. And if you're from the UK, you will know the type of day that I'm talking about. The kind that really seeps into your bones. It's miserable and you just can't shake it off no matter how warm you try and get. When I got to this church, I decided to sit inside instead of waiting out in the cold rain. And then the service started, and this man got up the front, and he stood there, and it suddenly felt like I was the only person in the room. And this stranger spoke as if he knew everything about me, and he said words that changed my whole life. It doesn't matter who you are, what you've done, you are loved, and there is a future for you. And so that changed the whole course of my life, and in many ways, it's why Odyssey exists today. Because I wanted to create a place where every child could hear the same message. You are loved, you matter, you have a future. And so after that first Sunday, I decided to keep going back. I joined a course, and I learned about this guy with long hair called Jesus. I learned about why this guy was special and how he could help me. And then in April of that year, 2010, I became a Christian. Through a connection at church, I then began volunteering at a local primary school, and this was my first step to becoming a teacher. And in August 2010, I decided to do some voluntary work overseas. I found this really small, obscure charity called Mercy Patia hidden away on the 4th page of Google. I sent them an email. And before I knew it, this lovely lady called Diane had emailed me back and said, yes, come on over. So I booked a flight to Thailand to spend 5 weeks volunteering at their children's home.
Sorry, Diane, stand up and take some applause for your service.
And Mum Liz as well. Mum Liz here as well. She's here. This was the original Mercy Children's Home. So it was such a special, formative time in my life. I saw prayers answered. I watched incredible people doing incredible work. And somewhere deep down, an unknown seed was planted. And so at the end of my trip, the team at Mercy took me to this plot of land which seemed to be hours away from the centre of Pattaya. And they told me they hoped to buy it and build a new children's home. It was surrounded by tall palm trees. It was alive with birdsong. It was just really peaceful and idyllic, and I thought a great place to nurture children. I was excited for their plans and grateful that they had included me in that dream. The trip seemed to fly by, and it was extremely hard to say goodbye to all of these children. But I promised myself and them I would be back very, very soon. But, as often happens, life got in the way. Back in England, I continued volunteering at the school, which then led to a paid position. I also helped run performing arts workshops for adults with learning difficulties through the church initiative. And I guess all of these experiences shaped me and eventually led me to apply as a mature student to study applied drama at university. I graduated with first-class honours, I set up a theatre company, and I kept working in education. And during those years, any thoughts of returning to Thailand began to fade. Until 2016. This new head teacher came to our school and she really shook things up. She ruffled a few feathers and many teaching staff left. And the old question, hey, what about Thailand? Started to grow louder and louder and louder in the back of my mind. So I took a leap. I said my goodbyes, I packed a suitcase, I brought £200 with me, which was all I had, booked a flight to see what life would be like in Thailand. I said to my parents, I will be back in 1 year. It's now been 9 years. I spent the next few years developing my skills as a teacher. I was fortunate to work in some excellent international schools. I completed a PGCE, and then I specialised in child protection. I also kept building my theatre company on the side here in Pattaya. But by 2019, I started asking myself, okay, this has been fun, but why am I here? Did I really come all this way just to work? Then COVID hit. And so in 2021, I found myself without a job and wondering whether this was now my sign to go back to England or to do something new. And that really is when Odyssey began. Not with this grand plan, not a business model, not with a huge amount of cash, just a need, a handful of children and a willingness to say yes to what was right in front of me. During COVID, some of you, if you had children or grandparents, you would know that parents at this time were desperate. Schools were closed, children were falling behind, parents were getting worried, online learning was just a mess. And they didn't know what to do. And before COVID, I had been running a youth theatre with around 20 children that I was seeing every Saturday. And my plan was to grow the theatre company and build on that work. But COVID stopped that in its track too. So I was like, okay, what can I do? What can I do? I've got no money left. So I put an ad on Facebook offering tutoring to anyone who might be interested. A few people hired me, and after several weeks of tutoring, a parent turned round to me and said, I really like your style. I love the way you work with our child. Would you consider being their full-time tutor? And I was like, well, no, I don't think I want to do that. But after a while, I eventually said yes. I told some other parents, and they also agreed that they would love to jump at the idea. So in August 2021, I found a small office space on an old hotel resort, packed up some books, a whiteboard, and moved in to open Odyssey Learning Centre. I spent the night before making tables that I'd ordered very cheaply from Lazada, arranging the room and trying to make this small little space feel warm and welcoming. It was exciting. I'd started something and it felt full of possibility, and I was not relying on other people to tell me what to do. So within the first 8 weeks, we had around 12 students registered, and I hired a staff member to help me. And by the end of the first term, there were 16 children aged between 7 and 10. I should probably mention at this point that I had absolutely no clue what I was doing. I had no long-term plan, I had no big vision, I had no roadmap, I had no experience. I was just relying on the grace of God and my own willpower. So the first year of Odyssey was really just take each day as it comes. Do our best. Hope for the best. But I could see that something special was happening. The children were happy to come to school every morning. Parents loved that we taught in small groups and the fact that we often went outside to do our lessons under the shade of the trees. I remember one parent saying to me in the afternoon, "I really think you're onto something here." And so they were right. The seed had been planted and it was beginning to grow. As 1 year turned into 2, it finally hit me. I had actually started a school. And starting a school had never been on my agenda. And with no experience of running one, somehow I had made it through an entire year. By the start of our second year, we had outgrown this small space, and we had then rented a larger building from the hotel. The building had been vacant for some time. It was dusty, the roof was falling down. It needed a lot of work, but I could see its potential. And it took weeks of hard work over the holidays, repairing the ceilings, repainting the interior, the exterior, moving out furniture, fixing toilets, you name it, we did it. And on the first day of term, I stood there watching as the smiling faces of the children and parents walked through the door on that first day. And I said to myself and the team, we did it. But year 2 wasn't just about bigger classrooms. It was also about bigger questions. What do I want this school to look like? Who are we here to help? Because ultimately, that is what education is all about, helping children. And so through trial and error in that first year, I knew I wanted Odyssey to feel holistic. We'd already started bringing in more nature-based learning, and I began experimenting with a creative drama approach to teaching called Mantle of the Expert. I wanted students to feel safe, to develop a love for learning, and to become resilient. And it was around this time that I was introduced to this concept of strength-based education. And that really inspired me and wanted me to pursue it more. I'd started something, I didn't want to give up, and so I worked every day, late into the night, learning, planning, and figuring out how I could move this small project of mine forward. From my own school experience, I knew I never wanted Odyssey students to feel like they weren't good enough. By this point, I had started to notice that many of our students had unmet needs: attention, safety, love, ADHD, behavioral challenges. I kept hearing how difficult it was for children with additional needs to fit into the traditional school system here in Pattaya. Many international schools local to Pattaya will only accept children with additional needs for a number of years, and then they will be asked to leave that school. And so I remembered my time working at a communication interaction centre back in my hometown in England, and I had seen inclusive education work and really work well. And so I made this vow that Odyssey would be a safe space for all children, but not only for the children, but for their parents too. A place where children could feel safe, a place where they could be loved, a place where they could grow. But the biggest challenges came in our third year, 2023 to 2024. This was the year my skills were truly stretched and when I learned what leadership really means. It was that year of very difficult conversations. The excitement and energy of year 1 had turned into fatigue and despair in year 3. I was teaching multiple classes. I was trying to support and train staff, learn new systems, talk to parents, manage behavior, all while the school kept growing. By this time, we had around 35 students. I'd taken on several members of staff. We had teachers, assistants, gardeners. We even had a bus driver to get students from Jomchen to where our school was. It was a lot of juggling for somebody with zero experience. And the old question came creeping back. What am I doing here? Why am I doing this? I could just go back. I had several big job offers with big pay packets. Why didn't I just take that? But no. I chose to take the hard road. I could see growth in the children. Thank you. I could see growth in the children, and we'd had wonderful feedback from parents, but I was also facing wave after wave of challenge. I remember I had to fire a staff member for misconduct and unprofessional behavior, and then they took me to court. I had parents telling me I was a poor manager and not listening to what they wanted. I had staff members constantly coming to me with problems, but rarely solutions. It seemed like everybody was knocking on my door to complain or to want something, and I felt like I had nothing left to give. And so by the end of the year, we had lost money, lost students, and I had lost my morale. I had spent so much time trying to say yes to everybody that I had lost sense of my own vision. I had lost the joy that the school had once given me in that first year. And so I started to think seriously about closing it down. Okay, I've done it. It hasn't worked. What's next? I remember one evening sitting alone in the school, staring out into the dark. I was exhausted, frustrated. Frustrated with the landlords who wouldn't support us. Frustrated with the roof that leaked and the repairs that they refused to do. Frustrated at the cost of the rent, which we could no longer afford. Frustrated with staff for not taking initiative. Frustrated with parents for not seeing the bigger picture of what we were trying to build. But mostly, I was frustrated with myself. I felt like a failure. Hands up if you've ever suffered with imposter syndrome. Yeah, a few of you. You're not alone. So imposter syndrome has always been there, quietly whispering in the background, knocking on the door, telling me I wasn't good enough, that I wasn't the right person for this job, that I was just faking it until somebody came along and discovered. And then in December of 2023, I was diagnosed with ADHD. So that didn't surprise me. I'd suspected it for years, but it did add another layer of challenge. I tried medication for a while. I hoped it would help me focus, but I eventually realized that actually it made things worse, a lot worse. And that could have been the end of the story, but thankfully it wasn't. What saved me was the support of the people around me who could see something great was growing even when I couldn't. The team at Mercy had become my second family since arriving back in Thailand, and it was their encouragement, love and support, along with the encouragement from the team at Radical Love, another Christian ministry we had partnered with, that kept me going. I dug deep and I found the strength to persevere. I also started to work with an educator in Malawi to receive some mentoring and leadership coaching, a chance to talk, reflect and find practical ways forward. Slowly, step by step, I began to deal with my imposter syndrome and to rediscover the vision and purpose that had been there from the beginning. Thankfully, I was able to give myself a bit of a kick and say, no, we're not done yet. And so with a move to a completely new location, I gave myself and the school a hard reset. This new site had everything that we needed. It had a wall around the boundary, it had secure gates, it had nature, it had lots of space and room for us to grow. It gave us the chance to put all the right procedures in place, to think about longevity and to build something sustainable. And here's the thing, I never planned any of this. Before moving to Thailand, I hadn't had a long-term plan, not really, to come back, and I certainly never planned to open and run a school. I could never have predicted that we would end up here on this land in this building that we moved to last year, because this new school building just happened to be the very same building that became the Mercy Children's Home after I left Thailand in 2010, on the very same plot of land they took me to see all those years ago. And so something happened then when we got the keys that really stopped me. I was going through this dusty old box of paperwork, and inside was a blue folder with pages from an old visitor's signing book. I flipped through and stopped, because there it was, right in front of me, my name, from 2010. It had been sitting there on that property for 14 years, just waiting for me to come back. And in that moment, everything clicked. All the struggles, all the doubts, all the late nights wondering if I was in the right place, it all started to make sense. For the first time, I felt completely sure that I was exactly where I was supposed to be. That God had planted the seed in 2010, and it had finally grown into what it was always meant to be. And so, here we are, the current chapter of our Odyssey story. If you managed to stay awake through all of that, turn to the person next to you and say, well done. Very good. So we are now in our 5th school year with around 46 children enrolled full-time, ranging from the ages of 4 to 14 years old. They are split into 5 different learning pods that are based on ability, not by age. We have both neurotypical and neurodivergent children, including students with ADHD, autism, sensory differences and behavioural challenges. All learning side by side, fully included and supported. We help raise awareness of neurodiversity amongst our students, building a culture of acceptance and togetherness, just like a family unit. And just like any family, there are times where conflict happens. Mistakes are made, conversations are needed, but we grow through it together. The most important thing is that our students know that they are not doing it alone. We as adults are also learning and growing right alongside them, sometimes holding their hand when they need it, sometimes giving them space to figure things out for themselves. Balance is key. We believe in placing children where they are most capable and allowing them to move to the next level when they are ready, not just because they've had another birthday. We are a fee-paying school, and those who can pay do. But from the very beginning, it's been important to me that money isn't the reason a child can't access education. So I provided places for students who can't pay or can only pay a small amount. This includes refugees from Pakistan, children from Ukraine who have lost parents in the conflict, and local Thai children who weren't going to school and were living in very poor living conditions. This, to me, is what our love-first philosophy really means, meeting the needs of the children in front of us, regardless of their background or situation. It might not always make the best business sense in the short term, but I have faith that kindness will always be returned. So as I mentioned earlier, we are a strength-based school. That means we focus on what each child can do rather than what they can't do. We help them identify their strengths, we celebrate them, and we use those strengths to help them grow in other areas. One of the most beautiful examples of this approach was a pond project that we had last year. When we first moved into the property, one of our students was fascinated by fishing. He loved to fish, and he kept saying, "Will there be a pond? Will there be a pond? Will there be a pond?" And on the fifth time of asking, I gave him a shovel and I said, "Okay, go ahead and dig." So him and his friends, one lunchtime, they started to dig on the ground. Those 3 students turned into 6, and by the end of the day, there was 10 students digging, and then it turned into a whole school effort to get this pond dug and ready. We then used it for our first Lloyd last year. The strength-based approach also challenges us as adults. It forces us to check our own negative biases, to stop and shift from stop, don't do that, listen to me, to asking questions, encouraging discussion, and guiding students towards reflection and growth. And so as a school community, we have agreed to hold ourselves to 5 key values. Always be kind, always be respectful, always be safe, always be willing to learn, always encourage each other to be our best. This is the heartbeat of our school and the culture that we are building together. One of my favourite ways we celebrate that culture is through our Strengths Festivals, which we hold at the end of every half term. These are special moments where we stop, we gather as a community, and we celebrate the children's learning, achievements, and growth. Parents, staff, and students all come together. We share projects, performances, reflections, and awards. There's a huge sense of joy and pride as the children get to say, "Hey, Mum, look what we did. Look how far we've come." For me, these festivals are a reminder that education is about so much more than test scores. It's about helping each child see their own potential and celebrating it. Before I share a couple of stories about individual children, I want to explain 2 things that have become central to how we teach at Odyssey: Mantle of the Expert and the Wild Place. Mantle of the Expert isn't just a project, it's a whole way of teaching. At the heart, it's about giving children responsibility and purpose in their learning. Instead of sitting at passively receiving information, they are placed inside a story where they are given the role of experts in a particular field. As a teacher, I take on a role too, sometimes as a client, sometimes as a manager, sometimes as an outside character. And I set up a commission or a challenge for the class to solve. The children work together using drama, research, problem solving to complete the task, and along the way they cover curriculum objectives in a very meaningful and hands-on way. As an example, last term our students became a team of orangutan rescue workers. And so together they formed this team, they created an office space, they designed a logo, and they took on roles that you would find within a normal office. We had security guards, we had somebody monitoring CCTV, we had a researcher, designer. And then once they'd set this up, they had received a call that a group of orangutans had been found injured in a palm oil plantation and they needed urgent help. So suddenly, this group of children, they weren't just learning science because I was telling them to learn it. They were researching habitats, they were understanding food chains, they were learning about conservation, writing reports, doing calculations, and even creating maps to plan the rescue mission. They also explored the ethics of deforestation and how decisions impact local communities and wildlife. At one point, one of the students, in role as a security guard, pretended to pull out a gun and threaten a co-worker. And so this led to a powerful discussion about workplace behaviour, consequences and ethics. This employee ended up losing their salary for a week as part of the story. And the whole class had to reflect on what that meant for the team and the rescue mission. This is what I love about Mantor. It gives children a safe space to explore real-world dilemmas and practice critical thinking, teamwork, and empathy, all while covering the curriculum. The learning mattered to them because they were living through it. They had a reason to work together, to ask questions, and to stay engaged. This approach, I believe, completely changes the energy in the classroom. Quiet children find a voice. Active children focus because they have a role to play. And as a teacher and colleague that works with them, I get to step into the story, guiding, nudging, and watching them take ownership of their learning. The other thing I want to mention is the Wild Place. This is our outdoor learning area, where lessons often spill outside. We build, we create, we explore. Now, being outside, it's not just a nice extra. It actually has huge benefits for us as humans. It really helps with focus, with mental health, with well-being, with brain development, with child body development. And so in the Wild Place, children take risks safely. They get muddy. They work with tools. They climb, they plant, they dig, and they create. It's a place where problem-solving, teamwork, and resilience grow naturally, and where children get to experience that learning doesn't have to be stuck inside a classroom. And so it's through these teaching methods and by creating a positive, affirming environment that we live out our small school, big heart vision. Meeting children where they are, loving them for who they are, and supporting them to realize their hero potential. We try to find the joy in each day. Yes, there are still many challenges, but it's about facing them with a better perspective. And so as I've grown as a school leader, I've had the privilege of seeing growth not just in our students, but also in our staff team. And one student I'd like to mention is a 12-year-old student called Emmett. Now, Emmett joined us at the end of our first year, and he's diagnosed with ADHD and autism, but he's high functioning, he's highly intelligent and extremely capable. When he first came to Odyssey, he really struggled to regulate his emotions. He would often express extreme, intense anger. When he was triggered, he would tip tables in the classroom, he would throw chairs, he would break cups, he would run away, he would do whatever he could do to just try and process these feelings that were running around his body. But 4 years on, Emmett is now a much calmer, more confident student. He manages his emotions well. He expresses himself clearly, and he's one of the highest achieving students in the school. I honestly believe that in a traditional school environment, Emmett might not have lasted long. He may have been excluded or labelled as a problem, but here we gave him space. We gave him time. We supported him with love and kindness, and we let him know every single day that he is accepted, he is safe, and he is able to succeed. Another student who has shown incredible transformation is a boy of 13 who joined us just 12 months ago. He had been expelled from his previous school, was angry, and he really had a difficult time with identity and understanding how to navigate his young life. Within the first few weeks of school, he was caught smoking, then he was bringing in vapes to share with the other students. He started small fires, and he was generally trying to push as many boundaries as he could. Again, a more traditional school would have said, get out. But with a calm approach from me and my team, with the understanding that his behaviour was a form of communication, not just something to punish, we slowly helped him to feel accepted and loved. He made friends, he took the time to listen and accept our help, and today he's doing just as well as his peers. He is polite, kind, creative, excelling in English, and developing his leadership capabilities. And so here we are, 5 years in. When I look around, I see so much more than just a school. I see a community. I see children who feel safe enough to take risks and try new things. I see students who have been given time and space to grow and are thriving because of it. I see staff who are learning alongside me, stepping into their strengths and making a real difference. But I'm not done yet. My vision for Odyssey's future is big, but it's not about getting bigger for the sake of it. I want Odyssey to stay small enough to feel like a family, but big enough to keep changing lives. One of the ways we're doing that is through our hero curriculum, a curriculum that I've worked hard to design because I believe every one of our students is a hero in the making. The hero curriculum is more than academics. It's about helping children discover who they are, what they're capable of, and how they can use their gifts to make a difference. We ask big questions like, what kind of people change the world? What kind of legacy would you like to leave? And we explore those questions through history, science, literature, and real-life projects. It's designed to grow courage, empathy, creativity, and resilience, so that by the time the students leave Odyssey, they're not just exam ready, but they're ready for the real world. We are also developing a leadership program to give students opportunities to serve in the community, to build confidence, and to lead, because we want them to leave not just with knowledge, but with character, and to be the change makers that we so desperately want to see in our world. And we'll keep living out our love-first philosophy, saying yes to children who need us, even when it doesn't make the best business sense, because we believe kindness is never wasted. And so this journey has stretched me more than I could ever imagined. I've learned that leadership isn't about having all the answers. It's about being willing to grow, to listen, to get it wrong sometimes, and to keep showing up regardless. I've also learned that boundaries matter, that saying yes to everyone can mean saying no to the vision. And I've learned that you don't have to be perfect to lead. You just have to keep putting one foot in front of the other, even on the hard days. But I should say, just because we're moving forward, it doesn't mean that it's all easy. We still face real day-to-day challenges. Challenges with the budget, making sure we can keep fees affordable and still pay our staff fairly. Challenges with raising awareness about the work we're doing and the impact it's having. And the ongoing challenge of getting our Ministry of Education license. We've been working with them since we opened, and we're working towards an international school license. But to be honest, we are a star trying to be squeezed into a circular hole. We don't fit the traditional model. They are expecting big class sizes with children split strictly by age and with very strict teaching instructions. And we don't want to, because we believe what we're doing works. So we keep persevering, we keep doing the right next thing, and we trust that the right doors will open at the right time. And really, this brings me back to the question I asked you at the very start. What would schools look like if they were led with love? That's what we're building at Odyssey, and what keeps me going even when it gets hard. And I want to say this too, none of this would have happened if other people hadn't believed in me and if I hadn't learnt to believe in myself. So here's my challenge to all of you. What have you been holding off? What dream have you been keeping on the shelf, waiting for the right time? Dreams do become reality, but not without hard work, perseverance, and a willingness to keep going even when it's tough. So if there's something on your heart, take a step towards it. And a question I want to leave with you today, what would it look like if every child could go to a school where they felt safe, loved, and able to succeed? What would it look like if education was built around love, not fear or pressure or test scores? I believe we'd raise a generation that would be ready to change the world. And I know this because I've seen it start to happen here at Odyssey. When I got the keys to that new building and found my name signed in that visitor's book from 2010, it was like everything suddenly made sense. That seed that was planted all those years ago that had been quietly growing through every high, every low, every late night, every tear, every moment of doubt, until it grew into Odyssey today. And I believe it is still growing. This is just the beginning of our story. My hope is that when you leave here today, you'll carry this with you. Sometimes the smallest seed, a single child, a single idea, a single act of courage can grow into something that changes everything. Think about the children in your life, your own children, your students, grandchildren, your neighbour's children, even the child that you used to be. Ask yourself, what can I do to help them feel safe? What can I do to help them feel loved? What can I do to help them grow? Because if we each commit to that, even in small ways, we can raise a generation ready to change the world. And if you'd like to be part of our Odyssey journey in a more practical way, we'd love to have you alongside us, whether that's volunteering your time, sharing your skills, becoming a community partner, or even helping provide scholarships for children who can't afford school. There's a place for you in this story too. Our school was built on community, and together we can keep growing it. Thank you for your time. And if you'd like to know more, come and talk to me afterwards. I would love to connect with you. Thank you.
Don't go, Mark. We make an opportunity for people to ask questions now, like at your school, right? So we got somebody would like to ask a question? John.
Hello, young man.
Please stand up because we might videotape you still.
First of all, I'd like to congratulate you on your tenacity that you've actually performed with no help from the government and anybody else. And that's important because you transported that to the children. But the one thing that's just struck me is your appearance. You have not gone down the areas where teachers dress down, sweaty shirts, torn jeans. I'm looking at your complete ensemble. Nice shirt, black trousers, polished shoes. And I base this on what I went through when I was young with actually dealing with teachers. Respect. You promote respect, and that is important, yes. Right? When I became older, so many years ago, I had an occasion to go to my old grammar school. And I thought, great. Anyhow, I remember the grammar school. We had a quadrangle, and you were not allowed to walk across that quadrangle. You had to go round the side. Only teachers crossed it. And we walked around it in silence. So I was anticipating this. And I went there. The noise. And they were running around. And there was this man there dressed in a sweatshirt and dirty jeans and sneakers, which had never been cleaned. So I thought, I'll ask him, he's got to be the janitor. Wrong mistake. He was one of the teachers. And I looked at him and I thought, how can that be respect? So you are projecting that, and I'm glad, and thank you for your talk.
Thank you very much.
Don't go anywhere. So, talking about an odyssey, you've had quite an odyssey, and as he will vouch for you, I've been on quite an odyssey to get him to give this talk, right? Do you think it was worthwhile, the odyssey, to get him to give this talk? A very small token of our deep appreciation. This is your graduation certificate. Oh, thank you, thank you. It was an inspiring talk about an amazing journey, and I'm really glad that some of our from people from Mercy, etc., are here to have heard this talk.